Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory be unto Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Makar Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone that rule well. Peace, salutations, and blessings be unto the hopeful elect, pushing his truth in sincerity throughout the four corners of the globe, in the sincere hopes of being delivered in these last days. This is the brother Yakanan from the GMS England branch. I have this report, this article. This is taken from the telegraph.co.uk and it's entitled How Britain Could Weaponize CCTV and ID cards to control you. Okay? How Britain could weaponize CCTV and ID cards to control you. And, needless to say, but I'm going to say it anyway, we've been warning you concerning, the escalation of this, New World Order system, of this beast system that is heavily, being pushed by the wicked elites of Esau Edom. We've been warning you time and time again, showing you that this thing is close, showing you that, Yahweh Shai's return is imminent, okay? And that's because these prophecies are getting ready to be fulfilled in their entirety. If you know, all right? If you're measuring the time diligently, as the scriptures command us to do, then you'll know, what time you're living in. And you'll know that we're in a time where all these prophecies are about to be fulfilled in these last days, okay? Now, they're not only weaponizing, CCTV and, digital ID cards, they're also in the process of weaponizing, food, okay? With this whole carbon credit score system, okay, that they want to introduce on a mandatory level, upon the earth, to the point where you might, for example, go into a supermarket and your intent, might be to buy some lamb, to buy some beef, okay? And you could be met with a rejection, okay? You could be met with a rejection and you might be told that, look, you've exceeded your allowance for red meat, or you've exceeded your allowance for fish, or you've exceeded your allowance for, chocolate, or whatever the case may be, okay? Based upon your carbon footprint, all right? And then an alternative suggestion, could be offered to you instead. That's the kind of world that we're heading into, full control, very draconian. This is what they're trying to manifest upon the earth in these last days. And these are the things that we've been seeing in, movies, TV series. But now, it's becoming a reality. Now it's not so funny anymore because you can see them actually building the infrastructure, okay? I remember, we have a food chain, out here in the UK that goes by the name of Asda, which is basically your equivalent of, what do you call it, man, over there in Babylon? Something Mart, all right, if I'm not mistaken. It's the equivalent, to that shop, all right, that superstore. Walmart, all right, I believe it's Walmart. So your Asda's, over here in the UK will be the equivalent to Walmart, okay? And this was a few years ago now. I was with one of the brothers and they set up these gates as you're exiting, after paying for your, your goods. They set up these gates where you have to basically scan your receipt and it opens up the gate. Now, when you look carefully at the gate, that they've built, you can see that there's a separate, if you will, compartment where it looks as if, they're getting ready to actually host, the micro C-hip scanning, technology. Okay. And we noticed that. So this technology, is already there in particular stores. You have Amazon Go stores out here in the UK as well. They're popping up all over the place. I saw one, the other day while I was on the job. So this system is being built. It's being, put in place, all around us. And before you know it, all right, it's going to be mandatory for you to receive within yourself that micro C-hip in order to be a part of society, in order to, have a job, in order to send your children, to the full system, in order to basically operate on the grid, of Esau Edom. You're going to need, that Motb. You're going to need that mark. All right. Now, again, how Britain could weaponize CCTV and cards to control you. Now it says the line between democracy and totalitarianism is blurring in the UK's surveillance state. And as we know, and as we've been hearing, they've introduced these digital ID cards, out here in the UK. And that's not going nowhere, all right? And the requirement for those cards is going to continue, to increase, concerning the requirement of it, okay? It's gonna become a thing where you're not going to be able to live without it. And then from there on, they're going to introduce the Motb, all right? Now it says the gates at the tube station, and they're painting a picture here, all right? They're painting a picture of how things is really going to be. Now it says the gates at the tube station open as you approach, and the facial recognition in the camera bank mounted on the far wall matches your features to your government records and then to your bank account. The man behind you is wearing a scarf. He taps his phone and his banking app is debited. The software of his banking app tied to his Department for Work and Pensions records informs the gate that he receives universal credit, which is the benefit system that you have out here in the UK. And it says, and the fare is reduced accordingly. The third man has a harder time and the gates don't open. An icon on his phone flashes a red bar through a green leaf. He has exceeded his carbon allocation for the month and must purchase additional personal units, okay? So they're showing you, how draconian they're planning to enforce, these things. All right, they're showing you where this is heading. They're painting, the picture for you so you can actually be able to comprehend how life is going to be in the very near future. All right, and you can imagine these things happening. You can imagine, someone running out of credits and being denied, something that they're trying to purchase, or being denied the right to travel because they don't have, adequate, an adequate social credit score or adequate, carbon footprint. Okay, that's satisfactory to the system. Based upon, those two things, they can stop you from doing a lot. Okay, and talks of a social credit score system has been at the height of conversation ever since they started talking about these digital IDs. Okay, and as I've mentioned, travel. Let's get it right quick. In 2nd Ezra, chapter 15, all right, because this was really it was shown, an example of this, was shown, during the L downs, all right, with the C-19, okay, when you couldn't go nowhere, right, you weren't allowed to travel, you had people that were getting arrested for, going outside, their zone, so on and so forth. So these things were actually happening. So that's prophecy, all right. So this is 2nd Ezra, chapter 15, and we'll start from verse 16, straight to the point. For there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. And you're going to have more people, rebelling against the system, rebelling against the powers that be, and protesting and, uproars because of these, looming draconian measures that they're trying to bring into place. Okay? Now, you've had a lot of protests out here in the UK. You've had people marching, uproars, so on and so forth. It's going to continue to get worse. But ultimately, the vast majority of people are going to bow down to this system. Okay? Because there's too much to lose. Okay? There's too much, what's the word I'm looking for? There's too much pain, that comes with not being tied, to the system, not having, that digital ID, not having, the mark. There's going to be too much, pain and too much demonization. People are going to cave in, all right? But the elect of Yahweh Shem Yahushua are not going to cave in, all right? The elect are going to stand stiffly. The elect are going to stand firm. And as the scriptures tell us, and as I always quote, the scripture says that the elect is going to have victory over the beast, over the image, and over his mark. Okay? So again, 2 Ezra 15 and verse 16, for there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another, they shall not regard their kings nor their princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. Now here's the point. Verse 17, a man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able. Okay? Now again, that's happened. All right? That happened out here in the UK. That happened in other parts of the world where you had these L downs. All right? With this whole C19 a few years back. All right? That happened. All right? You were stopped, from going places, but it's going to intensify. All right? Because now, through the, the WEF, you have, Carl Schwab's with their logo, you shall own nothing and you shall be happy. So they're looking to, completely maximize, that pressure to the point where you won't be able to go anywhere, to the point where, you'll have like, an allowance, you can leave the country once a year. Or to leave the country full stop, you have to build up your credits. And if you don't have enough credits, you won't be able to go nowhere. Okay? This is where things are heading. All right? And, people, think that this is a joke. But when your life drastically changes, to the point where that is going to be your reality, all that we're going to be saying through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Yahushua, we told you so. Okay? Ezekiel 33 and 33, then shall they know that a prophet has been among them. All right, that's the time we live in it, where the words, of the book, the prophecies of Yahweh Shem Yahushua are coming to pass. Okay, now verse 18 says, for because of their pride, the city shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. All right, now pride, all right, the pride in this world, the pride of the people, a lot of destruction is coming to this world through what? Through the pride of the people. Okay, people are going to be judged. Okay, we're in a time of judgment upon the earth. And this earth needs judgment. Okay, this earth needs judgment. Because the vast majority of the people are under the vibration of who? Esau, Edom. Under the vibration of the wicked. Okay, worshippers of themselves. High mindset. Yahweh Shem Yahushua is going to correct all of that, man. Now let's go back to this this article. So it says, where was I? The man behind you is wearing a scarf. He taps his phone and his banking app is debited. The software of his banking app tied to his Department for Work and Pensions records informs the gate that he receives universal credit and the fare is reduced accordingly. So everything is going to be intertwined. All of these services, your doctors, your benefits that you receive, your salary, okay, they've even started putting particular loyalty, cards that you might have linked to particular stores on the Google Wallet as well. Okay, so everything is being centralized into one system, bit by bit. Okay, so it says the third man has a harder time and the gates don't open. An icon on his phone flashes a red bar through a green leaf. He has exceeded his carbon allocation for the month and must purchase additional personal units. You take your seat and scroll through your social media feed. Small badges next to usernames show that let me read that again. Small badges next to usernames show that each has a verified identity, accessible with a tap. Some are complaining about overzealous enforcement of the Communications Act, with the real-time reporting of offences overloading the court system for cases relating to alleged hate speech. Okay, and again, what we preach, the words of Yahweh Shem Yahushai going out there on the highways and the byways, that's about to be demonized, on a very high level in these last days, man. Okay, the famine of the word is coming. That time where we're not going to be able to go out there on the highways and the byways and preach this word is coming. Okay, so we're not to get comfortable in this routine that we have, because very soon, Yahweh Shem Yahushai is going to switch things up, and we're going to be in the second phase, if you will, of the ministry. Okay, because that famine of the word is coming. And also, the famine of the word, of the highways and the byways online, is also coming, where you're not going to be able to utilize, YouTube to upload your lessons and, watch the apostles from the comfort of your home. No, that's all going to change. Okay, in this new world order system, they want to get rid of all forms of truth. Okay, especially the truth of the Holy Bible, especially the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of Yahweh Shem Yahushai. They don't want that, online. They don't want us out there on the highways and the byways teaching this word. Okay, that's the last thing that they want. Okay, they don't plan on bringing, the scriptures, the truth of the Bible into their new world order system, man. They want to leave that behind. Okay. Now, what's that scripture? Let me get Now, there's one scripture that talks about how we're going to become an offender for a word, which is a good one. But there's another one. Let me see if I can find it. Slay them that speak uprightly, something to that effect. Now, upright conversation. All right. Let's get that. Upright conversation. Yep. For Wadi Yahweh Shem Yahushai. All right, so this is Psalm chapter 37 and verse 14. And it says, the wicked have drawn out the sword and have bent their bow to cast down the poor and needy, and to slay such as be of upright conversation. Okay? So the wicked have the intent, the wicked have the desire to cast down, all right, the prophets of Yahweh Shem Yahushai, to cast down, the bearers of the truth. Okay, the bearers of the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of Yahweh Shem Yahushai. They want to completely cast us down, and they want to slay us. Okay, because we don't align with their new world order system. We don't align with their plans for the future. Okay, so they want to get rid of this truth. So they want to slay such as be of upright conversation. Now, who on this earth is of upright conversation? Okay, the prophets. Okay, the prophets of Yahweh Shem Yahushai, those that are pushing, the truth of Yahushai and the Holy Bible. We are of upright conversation because we're against this system. Okay, what we preach and what we teach, again, is against the vibration of the wicked, is against the vibration of the left-hand side. Okay, now in the NLT it says, the wicked draw their swords and string their bows to kill the poor and the oppressed, to slaughter those who do right. Okay, and that's their agenda. Now they're even doing it, on a level of, individuals that, might be speaking, fragments of truth. You have whistleblowers, that be getting, persecuted and so on and so forth. But that's going to be nothing in comparison to the persecution that's coming, to the prophets of Yahweh Shem Yahushai. But just showing you, all forms, of truth that goes against the narrative and the spirit that they're pushing is going to be punished. Okay, and there's another scripture. Let's get Isaiah chapter 59 and verse 15. All right, it says, yea, truth faileth, and he that departeth from evil maketh himself a prey. And the Lord saw it, and it displeased him that there was no judgment. Okay, and in the NLT it says, yes, truth is gone, and anyone who renounces evil is attacked. The Lord looked and was displeased to find there was no justice. Okay, so that's the spirit that's brewing, upon the earth in these last days. All right, anyone that renounces evil, you are made a prey. You are attacked. Okay, you are attacked because you're going against the system in some way, shape, or form. But the ultimate way of going against the system, all right, in these last days, is coming in the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Yahushai. All right, and that's the right way to do it. Okay, that is the right way to do it. That's the right way, to come against evil, is to come in the name of Yahweh Bahashem Yahushai. Okay, with this Bible, the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of the Lord. That's the only, true way, to come against the wicked, with the pure truth. Any other device or any other ways, it's simply not going to work. Okay, that's why, again, we are so heavily demonized, concerning, what we believe in, and concerning, what we're pushing out there, on the internet highways and byways, and on the highways and byways or the streets. Okay, so again, yea, truth faileth, and he that departed from evil maketh himself a prey. And the Lord saw it, and it displeased him that there was no judgment. And it also tells us in the book of Habakkuk that, the law is slacked and judgment doth never go forth. That's this kingdom. All right, the law is slacked. Okay, there's no justice in the kingdom of Esau Edom. All manner of wickedness and transgression transpires in this kingdom, and there is no justice. All right, but Yahushai, the Prince of Peace, he is coming to bring that justice. He is coming to set the record straight, so to speak. He's coming to correct the balance, because the scriptures say that a false balance is an abomination unto Yahweh Shem Yahushai. So the Lord is coming to correct the balance. He's coming to perfect, all right, perfect, the balance, man, and to make everything, according to how, his Father wants it. Okay, then Yahweh always say, I've come to do the will of my Father. Well, this is the will of Yahweh, all right? Is to destroy Esau Edom and bring down his wicked and satanic kingdom. That's the will of the Lord, man. All right, that's scriptural. So it says here, you take your seat and scroll through your social media feed. Small badges next to surnames show that each has a verified identity accessible with a tap. Some are complaining about overzealous enforcement of the Communications Act, with the real-time reporting of offences overloading the court system for cases relating to alleged hate speech. So hate speech is going to be a big way in how they're going to attempt to eradicate the presence of the men of the Lord on the highways and the byways, both online and on the streets, okay, for accusing us of hate speech, which is hey, what we bring out, is the truth of the Holy Bible, all right? And they claim to be, God-fearing nations, and they use the Bible in their court systems, but that just shows you it's all hypocrisy. That's why it says in what's that, Psalms 50:16, what have thou to do to declare my commandments, so on and so forth, roughly paraphrasing. They're hypocrites. It says most seem to think that this is a reasonable approach to ensuring that community relations are smoothed over. And if they don't, they aren't willing to say so in a forum with such close monitoring. Before going into the office, you stop at a Pret for a coffee, another tap of your phone, and another quick check of your records. No heart conditions on the health record, so no bar to caffeine. A disapproving message still nudges you to exercise caution with your intake. The man behind you is flatly rejected with his BMI is well over the approved threshold. So they're showing you that even on a health tip, they're going to be controlling you. All right. So let's say, for example, because remember, you're going to have the Motb within you. All right. Those of you that take it. So that's going to be monitoring, your body in real time. So if you're overweight, your BMI is over, they're going to dictate what you can and can't buy. And Catherine Austin Fitz, she has a lot of good content. She's an insider. She used to work for the, I believe it was the Bush administration. All right. And she has a lot of good videos out there. And she will be what you call a whistleblower. And she goes into a lot of good information concerning, how they're going to set this thing up. And she mentioned in one of her interviews how they're going to be able to dictate what you can and can't eat, based upon, your bodily state. So, for example, she gave this example. Let's say, for example, you go to, buy a pizza or go buy some, KFC or, whatever it is. Well, your money might not work in that shop. Okay, you might tap your card and then it's declined because you're overweight. This is the type of control they're going to have over the people. And then they'll redirect you to something on the menu, all right, that you can buy that doesn't have too much calories. That's not going to, make you put on, excessive weight. This is the kind of control that they're going to have. This is what they're planning to do. This is what is already in motion. Okay? Let me just plug my phone in. My battery's running a bit low. All right, so it says another tap of your phone and another quick check of your records, no heart conditions on the health record. Because remember, you're going to have biolabs, they call them biolabs, live biolabs, within your body, right? They already have this technology out there. You got watches out there that can monitor your heart rate and tell you, if your heart, pattern is irregular, so on and so forth. All right. So there's all kind of technology out there. So this is nothing new, but this is the technology that they're going to put into the device and then put within you. Okay. So it says a disapproving message still nudges you to exercise caution with your intake. The man behind you is flatly rejected since his BMI is well over the approved threshold for sugary drinks, and his welfare payments are not approved for use on luxury items. And that's another thing that they've introduced over here in the UK. The HM revenue, they now have the ability to go and monitor your bank account to see what you are spending your money on, all right, and see if the kind of things you're buying tallies up with the benefits that you're claiming. And if it doesn't, okay, if there's any abnormalities, I think that's how you pronounce it, they can basically, summon you in and, bring you in for questioning. And you're going to have to explain, your expenses, and things that you might be buying. So, for example, you might go on holiday, all right? You might, go to another country. They'll be like, well, you're not supposed to be able to afford that, all right? So they probably cut your money off. Okay, these are the kind of things that's happening over here. Now it says all of this is possible through the creation of integrated government databases, pulling information from the private sector and matching it to internal flags in a series of requests. It says at its core is the unique identifier issued to every British resident, a personal digital ID that acts as a fulcrum of the system. Okay, now it says here proof of identity. This isn't science fiction. Last week, the government announced plans to roll out facial recognition technology throughout the country, running images through police, passport, and immigration databases, and potentially putting live cameras in every town center. Okay, so they're building this prison. Okay, they are building a digital prison. And everyone's face is going to be on that database system. So wherever you go, 24/7, 365, they're going to know where you are. They're going to know what you're doing. Okay? There's going to be nothing that you can hide from these devils. And that's them seeking to be as gods upon the earth, because they know that the Lord knows all things. So they're trying to put themselves, in that light of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, of knowing all things. Okay? But they're going to be destroyed. All right? That's very important to note. But they're going to be destroyed, man. Because their feeble attempt to enter into a state of being gods is going to be disappointed. Like it goes into in the book of Job. The scriptures say that the Lord is going to disappoint the devices of the crafty. So their hands cannot perform their enterprise. That's going to happen. The Lord is going to allow them to get to a particular state, okay? And then he's going to throw them down, all right? So it says, the policing minister described the technology as the biggest breakthrough since DNA matching. It says the assessment isn't working. A thief caught on camera in a store can be identified, fed into a database of suspects while alerting the police to their presence and following for a rapid capture. At the same time, the Home Office's assessment that the technology will result in some degree of interference with people's rights is perhaps an understatement. The simultaneous introduction of tools for digital and physical tracking creates an opening where technology and infrastructure can combine with the political will to create a surveillance state tracking, monitoring, and identifying individuals, their movements, their associations, and their actions justified by the need to prevent acts of terror or crack down on unwanted protests. So how are they going to be able to do that? All right, because again, they're going to know where you are 24/7, 365. If you do something, there is going to be no hiding. Okay, all they have to do is check their cameras, check who's Michael C. Hips was in the area at the time. If there's a protest, all right, they're going to be able to control that protest, okay? Because, for example, if you were seen in that crowd, if your, Michael C. Hip was picked up in that crowd, well, they can turn your Michael C. Hip off, okay? They can cancel your account. They can freeze your money. Because remember, they're going into programmable money. Okay, money is going to be programmed like tokens. So you're going to have a portion of your money that can be spent on food, a portion of your money that can be spent on travel, a portion of your money that can be spent on healthcare, so on and so forth. So we're going to have programmable money. That's something that they're going to be introducing real soon. Okay, but as I said, the elect of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, we ain't going to be taking, the Michael C. Hip. All right, we're going to be trusting in the Lord. All right, we are going to be trusting in Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai to sustain us and to protect us in these last days. Okay, now it says, now you can get, a digital ID. All right, these things you can get, but the marker is drawn when they finally introduce, the physical mark that has to be pierced within you. That's something that is forbidden, and that's something that, again, the elect is not going to take. And the judgment, for taking that is in Revelation chapter 14. Okay? So it says, tracking, monitoring and identifying individuals, their movements, their associations, and their actions justified by the need to prevent acts of terrorism or crack down on unwanted protests. It says, for critics of an overbearing state, ID cards and surveillance cameras have become the most visible elements of this infrastructure. In Mikhail Bulgakov's novel, The Master and Margarita, the character of Koroviv provides perhaps the most concise summary of life in Soviet Russia. No papers, no person. The same phrase could be applied with near equal accuracy to any modern state, and in particular to Britain. Yeah, no papers, no person. In other words, without, that mark, you're not going to exist, like we've been saying. If you don't have that mark, them credentials to operate on that grid, you're not going to you're not going to exist to the system. Okay, so you're going to be like an invisible, entity that's just, wandering outside of the grid. Judge Dredd. These movies show you these things, man. Show you these circumstances. Now it says we are surrounded by things that identify us. When you are born, the fact is registered on a certificate alongside your name and the names and professions of your parents. If you want to drive, you must possess a license, usually in the form of a photo card. If you want to leave the British Isles, you will need to produce a passport. Along with paperwork is a long trail of utility bills and bank statements, unique identifying numbers for your tax returns, national insurance contribution, and NHS record. All right? It says proof of identity is taken as a baseline fact. It is extremely hard to live well without an ID in the 21st century Britain. That's right. Yeah, you can't, just go and open up a bank account if you don't have an ID. There's a lot you can't do in society if you don't have identification. Okay, your quality of life will be severely, blocked, severely, held back without, identification. ID is everything in this kingdom. Okay? Now it says with access to bank accounts, employment, and housing gated by checks that require you to demonstrate through official records that you are who you say you are. Hard, but not impossible. The proliferation of identity checks and documents has failed to halt the growth of a shadow economy, which that shadow economy is what they're trying to, completely eradicate. And that's one of the main reasons, they're using to push, this digital system, amongst, immigration and other things. It says, or the pull factor it presents to migrants considering the journey across the channel. For Keir Starmer, the obvious solution is in the form of another ID document paired with mandatory digital right-to-work checks, which that's going to do completely nothing, all right? That's going to do completely nothing to solve, the issue, that's at hand that they're pushing out there, showing you that the real agenda is to really just move towards the micro C-HIP. It says in small print, the last month's budget, it emerged that the total cost of this system is expected to reach 1.8 billion over the next 3 years. Now, I don't think there was anything else I wanted to take from this. Well, that's the last paragraph anyway, so I might as well finish it. It says, polling that simply asks the public what they think about the introduction of a system of national identity cards without further detail about what it would mean in practice. is relatively consistent, with 57% of people saying they would support such a system and 25% opposing it. Pulling a facial recognition is similar, with about half the population comfortable with issues and a third opposed. And the cases made for these technologies are not without charm. Facial recognition promises a safer, more secure society in which the police can crack down on habitual criminals. Alexander Iosa, Director of Government Innovation Policy at the Tony Blair Institute, notes in turn that the proliferation of identity documents we already hold is the problem digital ID is intended to solve. All right. So that's the the reasoning, that they're using, to push this Motb system. But for us that have the light, that have the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, we understand, the agenda that's at hand. And the scriptures tell us that we're not ignorant of Satan's devices, his evil schemes. So we know what's going on. All right, we know where this is heading. And these are the necessary evils that really, must happen to bring about the end of this man's kingdom. Okay. Now this is Revelation chapter 12 and verse 12. And it says, "Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you having great wrath, because he knoweth that he have but a short time." Okay, so we are living in that time, all right, where these the wicked elites of Esau Edom are about to come down with great wrath. Okay, because they're well aware that they have but a short time. Okay, you have things happening in the heavens, you have signs. Okay, you have things that they're being exposed to that we don't even know about, that I can bet you that, is terrifying them, man. Okay, don't think that, they're not having dreams. Don't think that the Lord, is not terrorizing them, man, with their demise and visions of how they're going to go out. The Lord is terrorizing these demons, man. Okay, this truth is plaguing them. Us going out there on the highways and the byways every week and uploading these videos, this is plaguing the minds of the wicked elites of Esau Edom, because they know it's coming. They know Yahushua is coming, man. They know that the power is going to be ripped from their hands. Okay? So again, for the devil is come down unto you having great wrath, because he knoweth that you have but a short time. So things are going to get real draconian, all right? Things are going to get real harsh. The quality of, life as you know it is going to severely change. And that lower state, is coming, spoken of in Sirach, the 2nd chapter. But the scriptures say, in, I believe it's in the 4th verse, take it cheerfully. Whatever comes upon you, take it cheerfully, man. Trust in Yahweh Shem Yahushai. Trust in his power to deliver. Trust in his power to save in times of tribulation. After all, the scriptures does say, through much tribulation shall we enter into the kingdom of Yahweh Shem Yahushai. So remember that. Whatever befalls us, wherever we go through, who's put it, before us? The Lord. Okay? But the Lord has given us the spirit, to overcome. He hasn't given us this, the spirit of fear, but of a sound mind, as the scriptures say, man. So these are the things that we have to keep at the forefront, of our spirit, man. Okay? Now, let's get, I'm going to close out in a minute. Let's get, Job, chapter 20, and I believe it's the 24th verse. Right, this is Job chapter 20, and we'll start from verse 22. And it reads, "In the fullness of his sufficiency, he shall be in straits. Every hand of the wicked shall come upon him," which is talking about, Jake. Okay, when you go into that word wicked, I believe, let's go into it. I believe the Hebrew word there should be Aimal, if I'm not mistaken. All right, I haven't gone into that for a while.
Strong's H6001. A male. A male.
Which basically goes into laborer, okay? So again, in the fullness of his sufficiency, he shall be in straits. Every hand of the wicked shall come upon him. When he is about to fill his belly, Yahweh Ba'asham Yahushai shall cast the fury of his wrath upon him, and shall rain it upon him while he is eating. Okay? So, in the midst of, fulfilling, this New World Order system, having people, with the micro C hip and having this beast system flourishing upon the earth, okay? When he is about to fill his belly, the Lord is going to return and he's going to destroy this kingdom, all right? And that's going to happen, via and in the midst of World War III, the third woe. The scriptures say, the second woe is past, and behold, the third woe, cometh quickly, all right? So that third woe is coming, okay? And we're already in the midst of the, the beginnings of, the third woe, because you have, particular nations with a high level of tension between them, okay? And that's the Lord rustling up, that third woe, all right? So the Lord is setting the stage for these prophecies to be fulfilled in these last days. So again, when he's about to fill his belly, Yahweh Shem Yahushai shall cast the fury of his wrath upon him, and shall rain it upon him while he is eating. All right, so the Lord is going to destroy this man. The Lord is going to remove, this man being Esau, Edom, the wicked elites, out of their position of power. Right? And not only Esau, Edom, but the rest of the nations too. Okay, when you go to Psalms, the 83rd chapter, it outlines our enemies. Okay, it outlines, who our enemies are, the other heathen nation. Okay, and the scriptures say that, the Lord is going to come back and he's going to have what? Many crowns upon his head. So he's going to take away the authority and the power from all of these, leaders of these other nations, man. Okay? So with that, Lord willing, this lesson has been edifying through the spirit and power of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai. And again, this just goes to show with articles like this out there, they're conditioning, the minds of the people. All right, they're conditioning you to accept, this beast system, the Motb system that they're about to make mandatory and introduce to the whole world. All right, that time of temptation is coming. You know what? Let's close on that, because that's the time, that's coming. Revelation chapter 3 and verse 10. And it says, because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I also will keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world to try them that dwell upon the earth. All right. So that hour of temptation, is about to be manifested upon the earth. It's coming. All right. That great time of, trial is coming upon the earth. And again, as we keep saying, Yahweh Shem Yahushai is going to have mercy, upon his elect. He's going to favor his elect. He's going to protect his elect in these last days. As it tells us in Isaiah, the 65th chapter, my servant shall eat, but ye shall go hungry. My servant shall drink, but ye shall go thirsty. Roughly paraphrasing. Okay? So the Lord is going to have his elect. He's going to help them in time of need. He's going to help them in time of trouble. All right, this truth is going to be a light unto our steps, and the Lord is going to guide us to where we need to be. Okay, so we are not to lose faith. We're not to lose faith. We're not to lose hope. In these scriptures. In the Comforter, because that's why it's here. You know, it's here to comfort us. It's here so we can go back and we can be edified on the stories, you know, aforetime. Like the scripture says, you know, the things that are written aforetime were written for our learning. Okay? So we have no excuse, you know, to be in the spirit of doubt. Only faith. Okay? So with that, you know, Lord willing, this lesson has been edifying. Until next time, I'll say shalom.